Hello, bonjour, and welcome wherever you are in the world to stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France being held here on Zwift. And today is a tough rolling stage through the lovely lanes and vineyards of France with a little bit of a sting in the tail. It is the Casse-Pattes route, essentially, literally translated means leg breaker. It's going to be an interesting course today. A little bit similar to yesterday, but with a variation towards the finale. But let's have a look at the standings in relation to the general classification. It is Canyon SRAM who lead in relation to the green jersey classification after that wonderful win from Tanya Erath yesterday. But the team that lead at the general classification is Team Tibco, so they will be wearing the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey, and that is what this is all about. That is the polka dot jersey, the Queen of the Mountains. That's been led by Drops Cycling, and that will be worn by Joss Loudon of Great Britain today. A very, very close-fought competition. 2 climbs each lap today. 2 laps of this circuit totaling around 46 kilometres. And this is the Maillot Blanc, the best young rider, and that is being led by a Canyon SRAM with 26 points, 2 points clear of Team 2020. And as you can see on the screen, joining me along for the ride today, I'd rather we've both done in the virtual world, is Hannah Walker. Welcome, Hannah. Some great stages so far, but different today. This is going to be a little bit tougher, I think.
Hey Matt, yeah, we've had some fantastic racing here for the virtual Tour de France. A little bit different, although some of the riders, if they saw yesterday's stage, they will recognise a few points. However, there really is that leg-breaking climb, isn't there? The Petit KOM, and although the gradient isn't, the average gradient isn't too steep, it really is a leg sapper.
It certainly is. When you compare it to other climbs out there on Zwift, it's actually not too bad at all. But I think in the context of today's race, it's going to be very, very difficult. 2.7 Ks, and there's the polka dot jersey. It is a category 3 climb, so 3 points on offer. We get to the big climbs next week. 1 or 2 next week awaits these riders. But today it is 2 laps of this particular circuit. And if you're joining us for the very, very first time at this virtual Tour de France, we are essentially making history. This is the first time the Tour de France has ever happened in a virtual world. It is here on Zwift, and the classification is based on points, not on time. So the team with the most accumulated points at the end of each stage in all of the different classifications are the team that leads. So in relation to the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey, there's 50 points on the line for the winning rider to cross the line. And the team that can get there, well, more riders, as most riders as possible in the top 25 riders, will maximise their chances of being up in the general classification. And the same can be said for all the other classifications as well. The points and the Queen of the Mountains. We have the women up first today. Here's a little bit of a... We'll talk about the power-ups in a little bit more detail. They are absolutely intrinsic to racing in the virtual world on Zwift, and they can really affect the overall result, as we've seen. These are the teams that are going to be racing today. 16 teams, 63 riders. Most teams have 4. We have 1 team today with 3 riders. Multiple world champions. This field is absolutely stacked. Chloe Dygart is there. She was up there, yes, in 2nd place. Megan Jastrab from Team Rally, junior world road race champion. Let's look at this. Lizzie Deignan as well for Trek Segafredo. And some more world champions. Lisa Brennauer, former world champion in the time trial as well. Marta Bastianelli for Ali Cipollini. 2 former world road champions on that squad. And this is the course that the riders will be facing today in both the men's and women's races. And as you can see, 2 third category climbs and 1 hotspot sprint. The hotspot sprint will count towards the Maillot Vert, the points classification, and the points on offer for the Queen of the Mountains, of course, will determine who wears the polka dot jersey at the end of the day, and that is on the shoulders of the Drops team as we speak. Now, this is it, live racing. They've already got quite a few kilometres under their wheels, well, 13 Ks, so they've just gone through the first hotspot sprint of the day. We'll update you with that information so far, and unsurprisingly, Hannah, it's a very fast pace. We're actually going to move to Radio Tour. Seb Piquet is going to just give us a little rundown of what's in store for the riders.
Pour la 4e étape du Tour de France virtuel femmes, la course est lancée sur le territoire français, un parcours casse-pattes, 2 tours de circuit à effectuer pour une distance totale de 45,8 km, 16 équipes représentées. Hello and welcome to stage 4 of the ladies' virtual Tour de France. The race is currently underway on the French territory, a hilly course today. 2 laps to be covered for a total distance of 45.8 kilometers, 16 teams represented.
Well, there, the dulcet tones of Mr. Seb Piquet, and they're already on the first climb of the day. This is the Aqueduct, Queen of the Mountains. So they're absolutely whizzing around this circuit. This first part of the course is what we saw yesterday, but let's have a look. Who's up there? It's Joss Loudon and April Tacey. Romy Kasper is also there. So Loudon and Tacey, both for drop cycling, looking very, very good at the moment. They're going to take maximum points. 3-2. Kasper is in third position. So great riding early on here, Hannah, for drops. They are really on their game, aren't they, to defend that Queen of the Mountains jersey.
Yeah, they've come into this stage 4 with a 4-point lead over Sarah Tizet WNT Pro Cycling, and they've taken as many points as they possibly can there with Joss Loudon and April Tacey. They've come in with a game plan, and they want to try and keep that polka dot jersey on the shoulders of drop cycling. And just after that effort, it's split the peloton up. They've got a slight lead over the other riders, but great tactic and great game plan there from drop cycling.
It certainly is. Well, that's two. Well, the sprint has been done. As we look at Joss Loudon there's her stats just dropping down, still hovering around 300 watts as the road descends ever so slightly. But Joss Loudon has really adapted well to racing on Zwift, and drops have had an absolutely superb virtual Tour de France so far. Won the opening stage, courtesy of April Tacey, who helped mop up the points. And just a reminder in relation to the points classification, any rider can score from one particular team, so it's the amount of points scored accumulated per rider as well. So Joss Loudon has scored a couple of points there, as well as April Tacey, so both of their points combined go towards the team classification. And for example, on the following stage, if it's a different set of riders, the team will designate a rider to wear that particular jersey. And that happened today in terms of the yellow jersey. The maillot jaune is on the shoulders of Leah Dixon. She didn't ride yesterday, but her team, Tipco Silicon Valley, have got the most accumulated points, and they've designated her to wear the coveted maillot jaune, which, Hannah, is a real honour, isn't it? It's, again, as we look at the field here, splitting slightly, but coming back together again. But imagine what it's like to ride in the virtual world in that maillot jaune. It must be very, very special.
Yeah, I just think, being in such a prestigious race like the Tour de France, you've got the yellow jersey on your shoulders. It also gives you so much confidence, and seeing how well your team have been doing over the previous 3 stages. Of course, Leah Dixon has been riding last weekend when we were in Watopia, but seeing how well they've been doing and working well together as a team, and taking the yellow jersey and having that on your shoulders, it is a real honour. And Leah Dixon and Team Tipco, they're doing it justice.
They certainly are. They've ridden absolutely superbly. Now, interesting news coming through in relation to the way the field is at the moment. We already saw a very, very fast pace from the off through that first intermediate sprint. About 10 riders were dropped after 5K, but we're hearing that one of the pre-race favourites, Ashley Moore-Mapasio from South Africa, riding for CCC Live, she's raced superbly so far on Zwift this year. She's actually been dropped. That's the information we're getting through, which, if true, Hannah, we'll get confirmation in a moment, is, well, that's a big, big surprise, because normally she's adapted so well to racing on this platform.
Yeah, that's a huge surprise. She spent, more or less the whole of her lockdown. She was in Spain riding and racing on Zwift. And she's really adapted well to this platform and this type of racing virtually. And that's a huge shame and a huge loss for the CCC Live team. They came into this, they had a great stage yesterday with Rianne Marcus and Marta Lack, and that's a big blow for the team. They would have hoped that Ashley Moore-Mapasio, potentially would have been up there on the stage, if not vying for the win.
Indeed, that is a big, big surprise, but it just shows how unpredictable sometimes this racing can be. All it needs is a difficult start. As we look at the figure of Jess Pratt there, Canyon SRAM, so happy and buoyed by the success of Tanya Erath. And here is another former Zwift Academy winner, Jess Pratt. She'll be in New Zealand. I would imagine Jess Pratt is riding in the middle of the night, unless she's somewhere else. We'll get confirmation of that. I'm sure the team will get in touch. But Jess Pratt, a very, very classy rider indeed, and has really hit the ground running this year for Canyon SRAM. And there are still 3 former Zwift Academy riders on the roster of Canyon SRAM. Just shows how successful the Canyon SRAM project has been. So the Zwift Academy project has been over the last few years. It really has been a talent identifier, like no other, really, Hannah.
It has. It's been brilliant, and actually seeing the success of the riders off the back of that, getting a professional contract with Canyon SRAM, and then also seeing how they've progressed, how they've been able to adapt to that professional life, Tanya Erath taking her first, one of her biggest victories yesterday on the platform in virtual Tour de France. She was delighted with that, and it just shows, how picking up it's like a new talent identification platform, and it really is wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. There's an interesting little infographic there on the success across all the different disciplines within road cycling of Canyon SRAM and virtual cycling, of course. They are spread across the board. They're such a good team. They've got so much depth and talent, and a wonderful atmosphere has been cultivated within that squad over the last few years. And when you've got a good atmosphere, an atmosphere that's conducive to riders feeling good about themselves, and a nurturing environment, well, it only breeds success. But they're not in the Maillot Jaune, but they are leading the points classification, as we mentioned, and they've got their Krista Riffel in the best young riders jersey. And there she just lost the wheel there. And Hannah, explain to us how difficult it is for a rider who just loses the wheel. I mean, look at that cap. In road cycling, out on the road, you'd probably be able to make an effort, unless it was a crosswind, to get back in contact. But it's going to be hard for her to get back in contact now, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really surprising from the young German rider. She's got some support on her side, but you just see, her head's falling down. She's sort of starting to lose morale as she's losing more time on the peloton. But because of the drafting effect on Zwift, you're not in that cone effect. She's not using any of the benefits of the draft, and the further out of the bunch in the peloton you are, the more you lose it, and it's going to be very, very difficult for Krista Riffel to get back on now, especially as the gradient starts to kick up.
Yeah, they've actually been on the climb for a little while now. It's again, it's not the most brutal of climbs. There are far more difficult climbs out in the world of Zwift, but it does average 4%, which is a nasty drag. And there are sections, as you can see at the bottom right hand of your screen, that's the indicator of the current gradient they're on. And they're currently climbing at 6%. And Riffel, just looking at her stats, she's currently in 38th position, but she's losing time drastically. 17 seconds now she's behind that lead group. But it looks like several riders now, that front group, Hannah, as you can see, look at that wonderful aerial shot we've got of the group. Sarah Gigante, Lauren Stevens, two of the best climbers. Leah Dixon also in the mix too. Joss Loudon, all of the names that you'd expect to perform very well at the moment are at or near the head of affairs. Chloe Dygart, the world time trial champion, there as well. And right on cue, there is a picture of the 10 times world champion. She is a virtuoso performer. She has an assassin-like attitude. It is win at all costs. But Chloe Dygart looking very, very good at the moment. Second yesterday, and she's clearly, again, in great form today, Hannah.
Yeah, she is. She looks very confident, relaxed, but focused. Just trying to get out the saddle, just pushing down the power on those pedals. Sitting nice and comfortably in this group that's formed now, with a couple of teammates there for company. But this is turned into a very elite group. Leah Dixon up there, Joss Loudon, Romy Kasper. But the team I want to make, the team of 2020, they've really taken to e-racing. Their team manager, Nicola Cranmer, very, very positive and forward-thinking in this style of racing on Zwift. So, yeah, they're not new to the platform. They've been doing it a while.
They certainly have. Well, Team 2020 is all about developing talent for various Olympic cycles. They were called Show Air 2016. Now it's Show Air 2020, all about the 2020 Olympics. Sadly, that isn't going to happen this year. They will be back next year, all being well. But as you quite rightly said, they've nurtured some talent, and they've been a big supporter of the Zwift platform for the last few years. Since the inception of e-racing, they've been there or thereabouts, and they do have 3 riders in this front group, which just shows how strong they are. As we look at the figure of Leah Dixon, putting out just under 400 watts. We're coming towards the top of the climb now. There's points on offer them. They do a hard left just here. Myself and Hannah have both had the advantage of pre-riding this course. You can ride it as well in the virtual Le Tap de Tour. Just head to zwift.com/events and you can ride this, or use your companion app to enter and ride. We're just coming towards the top of the climb. It just kick up just a little bit, but nobody's launching yet. There's a bit of a van draft being used just in the centre, which gives you 50% more draft for 50 seconds, which if you're riding in a group is absolutely ideal. You see often riders use the van draft not so much to attack, but actually to conserve energy, as Joss Loudon goes for the points at the top of this climb. You can just see the accumulated virtual avatar jumping up and down. It's a hard left again. This road really does snake around, and no doubt about the winner there, Joss Loudon, dominating the Queen of the Mountains so far today. Superb riding by Drops again, Hannah.
Yeah, this is timing everything to perfection for these Queen of the Mountains. picking up more points to that jersey that is on her shoulders. And it's another honour and also confidence to have such a jersey, an iconic jersey on your shoulders, and great for one of the smaller teams, with all due respect, in this race, and they're having a fantastic tour.
They certainly are, and as we expected, this field has really split apart now. Just looking to see it, trying to ascertain how many riders are in that front group. I think it will coalesce over the top of this climb, but this is a very, very fast section of road. It's about just around 3 kilometres now till we hit the finish, and then of course we'll do this all again. But Joss Loudon, she's got into that aero super tuck. That's when you reach a speed of 57 kilometres an hour and the gradient is less than 5%. You can freewheel in game, and your avatar will tuck into a virtual super tuck, and that will give you the opportunity to just save a little bit of energy. But when the gradient isn't super steep, you've got to be super aware that you make sure you press on the pedals at the right time so the gap doesn't open up. But Joss Loudon using that super tuck to good effect, and that's going to be important because she's already made, Hannah, hasn't she, 2 really sharp efforts. So this little bit of recovery midway through the game, really, really crucial.
Yeah, it's really beneficial to make sure that you take as much recovery as possible. I don't know about you, Matt, but when I was racing, I always thought about it as you had this sugar lump, and every time you make an effort, you're chipping away at that sugar lump or sugar cube. And by the end of the race, the more efforts you've made, the less sugar you're going to have at the end. So it's about being aware of the efforts you're making, being tactical and savvy. And Joss Loudon, one of the only riders in this group into the super tuck, everyone else pedaling away. But as you said before, it's important to make sure that you start pedaling at the right time. We've seen it before in racing that when you get into the super tuck, if a rider doesn't pedal at the right time, they end up getting dropped from the group, because once the benefits of the gradient and the speed go, it does shoot you out fairly fast.
It certainly does. Well, this is a great little group we've got forming here at the front of the race, and they're opening up a little bit of a gap. April Tace is there. Lisa Brennauer from WNT is in the mix as well. Anna Henderson, we haven't mentioned Anna Henderson, spending her first year with Team Sunweb. She was a bronze medalist in the mixed relay in Yorkshire last year. A very, very classy rider indeed. She's managed to infiltrate this group, and she's got a fast kick at the finish. 2 riders are there as well from Team Tipco Silicon Valley. We're going to have a look at a little VT from Team Rally about how much they've invested in understanding the nuances of racing on Zwift.
The most important priorities really that we focused on with the rally riders was helping them understand the movement of their avatar in the game.
I didn't realize how many tactics went into virtual racing.
The drafting effect, the power-ups, timing the sprint.
How to get to the front, slow down, keep someone behind you.
We practiced on a few different courses and tried to simulate some of the environment that we might see in tour.
He also gave us some, I'm going to call them top secrets, that I'm not going to reveal and leave that for rally cycling.
That takes the game to the next level.
Zwift is kind of a video game, really.
But there's actually so much more behind it.
We're pretty lucky to have a platform such as Zwift. Let me tell you, when that ticker goes off, you definitely get the racing nerves back in.
I'm excited to apply what I've learned from Halton over the last couple of weeks.
I'm really looking forward to represent Rally Health during this upcoming virtual Tour of France.
Well, very interesting. The amount of time and energy that the rally team have spent. They got the victory in the men's race yesterday, of course, with Matteo Delsin. And they've got the world champion there, who was just off the back of this group. In fact, she's just been distanced. And then we have 13 riders, so 11 riders, in this front group at the moment. And one rider somehow, Hannah, who managed to get dropped, is Chloe Dygart. She managed to, just lost the wheel or something happened there. But she's out of the back of this group, which is a big, big surprise. But 11 seconds is closable, but she's going to have to do it now or never, isn't she?
Yeah, as you say, it's now or never. If she wants to try and get back on, she needs to, use all the energy, all the what she's got to try and get back. I am seeing one of her teammates is still in this group, so it could be that, with the communication methods between the riders and the sports directors, just tell her teammate Courtney Nelson, don't do any work, don't push on the pace at the front of this group. And Chloe is trying to get back in touch with this group, but she is closing the gap. It's now at 8 seconds, so it's looking promising for Chloe Dygart.
Yeah, there's a couple of riders just with her as well. She's in a group, and that is important. And it does look as if the speed has dropped on the front. And here is young April Tacey. You could just see her easing off on the pedals there. 39 watts, just making sure she's sat in the draft. A mop of her brow, clears her nasal passages, and hands it back to her virtual soigneur. So April Tacey has really taken this to this platform like a duck to water. Took the opening stage, was third yesterday, so consistent, and knows how to sit in the wheel. But it looks as if I think a couple of riders might get back in the group there, because that was a definite easing of the pace, and it does look as if that happened. This group has now swelled to about 15 or 16 riders, Hannah.
Yeah, and if you just look at the names within this group, Lucinda Brand is here, a very good rider, riding for Trek Segafredo. Lisa Brennauer as well, a 4 times world champion. If you just get the classement on the right-hand side of your screen of the polka dot jersey points, drops have increased their lead now by 12 points over Sarah Tizet WNT. So 2 more opportunities for the German-based team to score, but it is looking promising for drops as we get a look at Lisa Brennauer there. Looking very comfortable, I must say, keeping a nice cadence.
She is looking good, isn't she? She is the current German road race champion. She's been a former road time trial champion of the world as well. And she has been with the WNT team for a little bit of time now, but she does look very comfortable indeed. But when you look at the roster of riders here, and you look at the kind of attributes that she has physiologically, and the kind of effort that it takes to race on Zwift, it is obviously there are spikes, there are little elements of rest, but essentially it's riding at or near threshold. And as one of the best time trialists in the world, this kind of effort will really suit her, won't it?
Yeah, well, and combining, her physiological attributes, she's also very good on the track as well. She's a European individual pursuit champion. She along with the German national team, they got a bronze medal at the Track World Championships in Berlin back in February. So this, as you say, this type of racing really does suit her. She's got the power, she's also got the speed, and she has raced on Zwift before. She did very well in some of the Zwift Classics and the KISS Super League last year. So she's not completely new to it, but doing very well in this mix right now as the group has swelled.
It certainly has swelled a little bit. It's eased off a little bit. Jess Pratt has moved into that front group as well. She's got a teammate for company, Hannah Ludwig, the young German rider, very talented German rider indeed. She's managed to get back in the group, and we do have, let's just have a look at that. We have 18 riders in that front group, and the next group on the road, Hannah, at 41 seconds, being led by CCC Liv. Chantal Black has not made it, the former world road champion, so we've got a real elite group now. Given the gap is around 40 seconds, I cannot see, without wanting to predict too much, anybody else getting back in the touch. Leanne Lippert is there, Anna Henderson, so 2 from Sunweb, 2 from Team Drops, 2 from Canyon SRAM, and incredibly, but unsurprisingly I guess, 3 from Team Tipco Silicon Valley Bank. They are in pole position to score a ruck more points towards the general classification here. Superb riding by them so far.
Yeah, they had a little bit of an off day yesterday. I mean, Kristen Faulkner was still in the front group, and she scored well towards the yellow jersey. And they have maintained that the maillot jaune in the team, but I think this is the time and the day and the stage that they need to try and pick up as many points to solidify that lead over Canyon SRAM. Canyon SRAM had a great race yesterday, and they did close the gap significantly.
There is Lauren Stevens, very experienced rider. She's won on Zwift before, of course. She took the stage 2 of this race, and she won a stage a few weeks ago of another race on Zwift as well. So she looks very easy, but again, looking at the power they're putting out at the moment, this is definitely a bit of an entente cordiale. They're definitely thinking about what's ahead, because all of them will be acutely aware of what it takes to stay in contact on that final climb of the day. I think that the next climb that's coming up, the aqueduct, isn't too bad. It's a shorter effort, only take about 40-50 seconds, but that next climb just completely blew the field apart. So there's no point, they've made this front group now, there's no real point in pressing on until we get to the key part of this race.
Yeah, and I think, if they're in communication with their sports director, they'll see that, the next group along, as you mentioned, they're at 45 seconds. So there's no worry of those riders getting back on unless something drastic happens. So they can, just ease up a little bit, relax, recover, and also just suss out, the riders that are in the group, what their tactics are going to be for the team, and thinking about what do they want to go for, because it's obvious that Drops want to go for the Queen of the Mountains. We've got Canyon SRAM wanting to take as many points as possible in the maillot vert, the green jersey, and some of these riders actually might just be thinking, we're not bothered about the classifications between now and the sprints of the Queen of the Mountains, but it's the finish and the stage win that these riders want.
Yep, I think as we talked about this yesterday, didn't we? I think the deeper we get into this race, there'll be more distinct tactics and more distinct plans in relation to the way the teams apply themselves, the way they commit their resources to the different classifications, the yellow, of course, and the iconic maillot jaune, the maillot vert, the green jersey, for the team that has accumulated the most points on the finish line. So the first 10 riders across the line get points toward that classification, as well as out on the road in the intermediate sprints. And then, of course, that rather wonderful polka dot jersey, the maillot à pois, the Queen of the Mountains. Again, another iconic jersey, which is just great. To see the jerseys rendered here is absolutely fantastic. As we look at the rider workload so far, we get some great little infographics here to look at. They got Mormon Passio, 4.9 watts kilo. Nelson there is looking very, very good. She's actually in this front group as well. And then Romy Kasper, again, a rider in this front group. Average workload since the start, just under 5 watts a kilo. I know where I'd be well out of the back. And that just, any of you who are watching this and understand the power, and I think anybody riding on the Zwift platform will get a sense of what it takes in terms of effort to produce these kind of numbers. And those numbers are exceptionally high, and they've been riding now for nearly 40 minutes to hold that power. Well, it makes my eyes water.
It's incredible, isn't it? It just shows that the strength of these riders and the power, and as you said, just try and go and do one on the Étape du Tour and see how long you can hold those numbers for. And it's mightily difficult, especially as well when you actually compare it to their heart rates as well. If you were to try and do that and maintain those watts, I'm sure my heart rate would be through the roof.
Well, one way you can actually, that's me as well. But we've both ridden this course. It's a beautiful course. It's inspired, of course, by Brittany to a degree, the lavender fields, the sunflowers, the Pont du Gard, where, of course, we have the aqueduct climb. And if you take a little look as we're heading towards the finish, although these riders will be looking at their stats rather than the view around them, we have something along the lines of Mont Saint-Michel as well as these lovely open rolling fields. We've even got some rather green windmills in the background, and a very old-fashioned windmill as well, which is known as a moulin, as we look at Leah Dixon, the virtual maillot jaune. Looking very good, looking easy, and quite clear. It's quite clear to me now, Hannah, that these riders are steeling themselves, preparing themselves for the latter part of the race, because, as we've seen, that climb is going to be absolutely pivotal. It's under 4 kilometres to go from the top of the climb, so only kind of 4 or 5 minutes of racing. It's all going to kick off there or on the slopes of the final climb.
Yeah, it is looking very calm. You can just see in Leah Dixon there, she had some headphones in, so she'll be a way of communicating with her teammates and the sports director. They can change any tactics on the road if they need to, just to relay some information, as you would do in the real world when you have race radio. As we come towards another sprint point in around 5 kilometres time, but noting that the riders from Tibco not hitting the front at all, making the most of all of that draft effect. We get a first look at Anna Henderson.
There we go, Anna Henderson. Well, look at the wonderful symmetry there. She's even made sure she's got her face and the front part of her body in the shade to keep nice and cool. But great there, the Sunweb jersey. That's a jersey they've redesigned slightly for this part of the year. Teams actually do have the opportunity to change their jersey mid-season, and Sunweb have done that for the hotter part of the year. Of course, apparently lighter colour clothing is slightly cooler in the hot weather. But Anna Henderson, a great rider. Really, really strong, multidisciplined as well, and good to see her in this front group. And she does have a teammate with her company in the form of Leanne Lippert as well. So 2 riders from Sunweb. And it looks like somebody just dropped their power up. That was an interesting use of a power up there. But again, if you're riding on the flat and you've got a power up that you don't necessarily need, we do often see riders just getting rid of them just to save energy rather than to make a difference in terms of getting into a breakaway or going on the attack.
Yeah, and you get a new power up of course when you receive them at the sprint arch or the Queen of the Mountains arch or the finish line. It is completely random at which one you do get, but as you said, if you don't want it, it's better just to get rid of it, and then hope that you get your preferred one that you want at the next arch. But the more teams ride and race on Zwift, the more they get used to it, and it's almost acting a substitute of the variables you get in real life racing. So if you had a mechanical or the crosswinds or something like that, it really comes into its own.
It certainly does. Well, there we go. Brand now takes her turn to the front. Gigante is there as well. So just a bit of a run through of the riders that we've got in this front group. 3 riders from Team Tibco Silicon Valley: Lauren Stevens, Leah Dixon and Sarah Gigante. We've got a rider there from Canyon SRAM, or 2 riders should I say, Jessica Pratt of New Zealand and Hannah Ludwig of Germany. Then moving down to Team 2020, the World Time Trial Champion and World Pursuit record holder, as well as World Pursuit Champion, Chloe Dagard is in the mix as well. She's already had 2 top 4 placings on stages of the virtual tour. She's got a teammate for company, Courtney Nelson. In the mix for drops, we have April Tacey, the winner of stage 1, and Joss Loudon, resplendent in the polka dot jersey, of course. We've got Sharad Gillow. We haven't mentioned her too much, the Australian running for FDJ Nouvelle Aquitaine Futuroscope. 2 riders from Sunweb in the white and black, Henderson and Lippert. We've got Lucinda Brand, the very, very experienced. She's the current world relay champion in the mix for Trek Segafredo. Lisa Brennau, the German road champion, is there for Ceratizit WNT. 2 riders from Ale BTC Ljubljana, that's Eugenia Bujak and Erska Ziegart, and Romy Kasper is the sole representative from Park Hotel of Valkenburg. So an interesting mix, and still around, Hannah, 50 seconds to the group behind, and they know that. They'll know the gaps. That will be communicated to them, so there's no real point in forcing the pace just yet.
No, there's not, and all the riders sitting comfortably, just spinning the legs over, turning over. But when you look at the watts that they're pushing, it's still high hundreds, low 200 watts. Leah Dixon just over 200 watts now, moving up through the bunch. But they'll just also be looking at each other. They'll know what their own strength is personally as well, of what they can do. A lot of good climbers in here, but some of the riders pack a better punch than others. So those who aren't as good at sprinting towards the end of a race will be thinking, how can they attack? How can they, sort of get away, form a breakaway on the Petit QOM?
Yeah, the Petit QOM. It doesn't feel like a Petit QOM when you ride up. I can tell you that.
So
I think they should. I think they should immediately. I'm asking ASO to rename the Petit QOM the Grand QOM for this particular stage, because the way the field detonated was really something to behold. Now, we've been talking about stats. Now, of course, you can actually get the kind of stats that we're looking at. I have this page open. It's Zwift.com/raceview. So head over there on your laptop or your mobile device, and you can drill down, see whereabouts the Vera's groups are on the course today. You can have an overview of the map, the elapsed time, and also you can focus in on the teams and the individual riders, look at the composition of the group as well. So head over to Zwift.com/raceview for like an added layer of information, which hopefully will augment and help you enjoy what is a wonderful spectacle. We're halfway now, and there is, well, all of our picture-in-pictures. There's all of the riders. Every single rider in the field has got a camera in their own home, and I think the more you kind of think about the logistical aspects of pulling together a virtual Tour de France, it does blow my mind. I mean, I struggle sometimes just plugging my laptop in and getting a Wi-Fi signal, Hannah.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think having this new aspect where we can see all riders racing in real life as well as seeing their avatars. So, and it also just shows when you see their pain faces and where they're racing from. Some of the teams are on a training camp. Other riders are doing it from the comfort of their own home. I think it's brilliant to be able to see them in real life as well, and just see the effort that it takes to race in this virtual Tour de France. But I think, as you said, logistically, very, very hard. But the way that ASO and Zwift have done this, it's brilliant.
It certainly is. It's just definitely filling that hole. Well, it's doing more than filling the hole. Of course, we're normally used to seeing the Tour de France right now. They'd be midway through the race, well, maybe just over half distance. 2 weeks in, I think, is we'd be right now. We've got the virtual Tour de France instead. And it really is a wonderful showcase, a chance for the teams to engage with the fans, a chance for the riders to get a little bit more focus as well, because of course they've been absent from competition since the back end of March. Some of these riders haven't even raced on the open road this year. So important psychologically and commercially as well for these teams to get out and ride. And we look at Marta Bastianelli. I can confirm Marta Bastianelli is not in the front group. She's on social media right now. So it's just quite interesting to see the former world road race champion. And here we are, we're at the first sprint again, well, the second sprint of the day. And this is the Pavé sprint. And I'd imagine that we'd see the teams from Canyon SRAM. They are leading the green jersey competition. They're just coming around the corner here. Riders leaving it just a little bit late to go for the sprint. Are we going to see Jess Pratt and Hannah Ludwig go for that? Yes, well, it's Romy Kasper. Lauren Stevens now moving to the front here, putting out 5.8 watts a kilo. Kasper, Dixon, Ludwig now trying to move up. Remember, the first 10 across the line get points. So there was, I think, the best rider from Canyon SRAM, should I say, was Hannah Ludwig. We'll get confirmation of that in a minute. But I tell you what, that was quite interesting, Hannah. I think the riders, rather than really make an explosive effort there, just increased the pace a little bit, and rather than kind of using valuable energy because they know what's to come. That was quite interesting. That was one of the most muted sprints I've seen, but it just gives us, should I say, an insight into how they're feeling, and the focus is now really on the back end of this race.
Yeah, and it was, Hannah Ludwig was up there for Canyon SRAM. They've got a solid lead actually in the green points jersey, but it's interesting, still picking up points in that, maintaining the jersey, but without expanding too much energy. It's not long until we get to the next Queen of the Mountains, but yeah, it was very neutral, the sprint. A lot of riders thinking about the back end of the race.
Certainly are. They've got 2 climbs to come, and as you correctly pointed out, the next climb only comes shortly. It's only a short one, but there is confirmation as they whiz along at 46 k's an hour. Lauren Stevens took maximum points there. Kasper third, Hannah Ludwig the best of Canyon SRAM, and then Dixon, Nelson, Davidson and Gigante. And we can confirm from headquarters that Canyon SRAM will keep hold of the green jersey competition, although of course there are points on the line at the finish, but that won't actually interfere with their lead. They've got such a handsome lead in that competition, such a solid lead. They started the day with 182. They'll be well over 200 now. So one jersey that is guaranteed to be on the shoulders of Canyon SRAM tomorrow is the Maillot Vert. And that's currently been worn by Jess Pratt in game, who is in this front group. She's just in second position behind Leah Dixon now. And just a reminder of the teams represented in front. We have 3 riders from Team Tibco, 2 from Canyon SRAM, 2 from Team 2020 in the green and blue, 2 from Drops in that rather fetching kind of faded blue and purple and red kit, 1 from Futuroscope, FDJ Futuroscope in the white, that is Sharagillo, 2 from Sunweb in the black and white, and 1 from Trek Segafredo, 2 from Ale Ljubljana, and 1 from Ceratizit WNT. And that is in the blue with the red shoulders, and that is Lisa Branauer. And this is the lower slopes, or the mid slopes, of the Aqueduct Queen of the Mountains. Lauren Stevens, consummate climber, on the front again. Josh Loudon, expect to see both the riders from Drop scoring points again. It is only a 3rd category affair, but Romy Kasper, we're looking at the stats of, but Josh Loudon is going to take maximum points again. Good riding by Josh Loudon, maximum points for Drops. So it looks as if they are going to be okay in the lead in that classification, although it is very tight at the top. So again, perfect riding so far by Drops there, Hannah.
Yeah, just the bunch, the small group, allowing Josh Loudon to go away. Josh putting down the power, but they will take that jersey, I think, into next week's stage on Von 2. So Ceratizit WNT not scoring again in that Queen of the Mountain. Loudon taking 3 points, but it's clear to see they've come in with this game plan, they're sticking to it, and it's paying off for them. Tacey not making any effort in that one though, as she did in the previous Queen of the Mountain earlier. So shows to me that potentially Loudon going for the Queen of the Mountains. Is Tacey going to save it for the finish?
I think given the amount of points on offer, only 3, 2, 1, is it really worth putting too much effort in when you're looking at a possible stage win number 2? Remember, April Tacey took out stage 1, which was a big surprise. She's such a good rider, such a solid rider. She was 3rd yesterday, so has shown real consistency. Josh Loudon was 2nd on stage 2. So Drops as a team have been so consistent. And they're heading into today's stage in the general classification. Drops were third with 150 points. Tipco were first with 197. Canyon SRAM second with 174. But with 50 points on offer, all the way down to 1 point for 25th place. It's still very, very tight at the top, isn't it, Hannah? A lot can change, and you can see these riders now thinking not so much about the intermediate classification today, but about the honour, about about how iconic and about how important it is to try and get in yellow.
Yeah, it's so iconic, and it is a real honour. And for these teams, you know, we've not had any racing for such a long time for their sponsors, for their teams, also for them, giving them a confidence boost to these riders. It's so important to try and, you know, maintain the yellow jersey, or to try and get a stage win under your belt, or you know, to pick up points along the route towards the Maillot Vert, or even take the young riders jersey. It's interesting to see as well, despite us having a few climbers in this group, we've got some very, very strong sprinters. Eugenia Bujak, the Slovenian rider from BTC Ljubljana, just sitting nice and quietly in this group with her teammate Urska Zigart.
Yeah,
Lisa Brenner, another strong sprinter.
Indeed, she is exceptionally quick. And this is Corin Rivera, the former US road champion, former winner of the Tour of Flanders as well, but she's in a group behind. She's sitting just over a minute behind in a group of very, very classy riders indeed. But Corin Rivera hasn't raced on Zwift that much, so I would imagine that she's still getting used to the platform, but still putting in a good effort. And only a minute behind means they are still having to press on in this little group. But remember, all importantly, in terms of the team classification, although we have a group of, just confirm the amount of riders out in front, we have 18 riders in this front group. There are points all the way down to 25th place. So if you've got a rider in the next group, you need to keep pressing on, because when you look at after 6 stages, if it comes down to just 2 or 3 points at the end, it could be the riders lower down the field that make the big difference, so they have to keep riding.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, we see other team events, especially the likes of a few in the UK, where team classification is vital, and it's on count back. It's kind of like you can't sit up as you would in a normal race, and because it's you know, the jersey doesn't stay with the rider. So for instance, as we look at the maillot jaune with Leah Dixon, you know, she wasn't racing yesterday, but you know, they changed the yellow jersey to a different rider in the team. So it's all important, and especially, you know, as we've seen in previous races in real life as well, things come down to the wire. You try and pick up as many points as possible.
That's it, and there'll be the team managers will be fully cognizant, fully aware of the detail. They'll have all the stats in front of them, know where their riders are in the field. They'll know how that will potentially affect their team standing, especially teams a little bit higher up the rankings. Some teams that have dropped away, maybe just focusing, trying to regather themselves and focus on stage wins. But the teams in the top 5 or 6, top 10 overall, could make a big, big difference. As we look at Anna Henderson just at the back of that group, Anna Henderson clearly knows how to ride on Zwift, because the position that she's riding in is actually one of the most beneficial positions in relation to getting the most draft. And that little line they just crossed there, that indicates that we are at the foot of the final climb of the day. It is called the Petit QOM. It's 2.7 kilometers long, 4% gradient, but do not expect the pain to be petit. I expect there to be some grand mal dans les jambes of these coureurs heading towards the back end of this race. Chloe Dygart just sat in her pain cave there, looking very, very comfortable at the moment. She's already had a 2nd place and a 4th place on stages, and I know that she would desperately love to win. And she's very, very hungry for success. And arguably amongst this group, when you look at the way she's been riding over the last couple of years, arguably has the biggest engine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at the way she raced at the individual time trial worlds last year in Yorkshire, and you know, the time margin that she won by, yeah, definitely one of the most powerful in this group. But does that, you know, translate in Zwift racing? She did lose contact at the top of this climb on the first ascent up it. Will she have learnt from that though, and you know, try and keep more, you know, into the centre of the bunch? Try and make the most of the draft effect. She has got 2 other teammates in the group as well, with Nelson and Davidson.
Leah Davidson there. It's good to have. I thought there was only 2 riders in it, but yep, 3 riders there. Dygart, Davidson and Nelson. So 2020, even if they just stay in these positions, they're going to score a nice hatful of points towards the general classification. We're still on the lower slopes of this climb, remember. It is 2.7 kilometers long. It pitches, it ebbs and flows. We're on a slightly steeper section here, 6% as you can see. Just focusing on the figure of Joss Loudon from Great Britain. Riding at home, inside the shade, just pedaling a nice cadence there, 100 RPM, that's revolutions a minute, 258 watts, so something that she could cope with pretty well, Joss Loudon. She scored maximum points so far today in the Queen of the Mountains classification. So all being well, she finishes safely. She doesn't fall off a turbo trainer, basically. The team will be in that jersey tomorrow. So a distinct lack of accidents here, but one rider's just started to go clear. Sarah Gigante has just moved off the front for Team Tibco Silicon Valley. And for the first time, Hannah, here we're seeing the shape of this peloton start to change. A teardrop, they're starting to string out under the impetus being applied at the front.
Yeah, Gigante, a former Australian road race champion. She's the current individual time trial champion as well. So very much suited to the any gradient that goes upwards. But it's interesting to see that Lauren Stevens, her teammate, is kind of sitting on her wheel. If maybe would be better to let Gigante get a little gap and force another rider from a different team to close that gap. Just see Gigante there in her pain cave.
She's got an interesting thing attached to her head there. I'm not too sure what that is, some sort of strange antenna. I'm not too sure, but she's clearly wired up and she's putting a lot of power through the pedals here. And I think she is actually riding in Australia at the moment, so it's going to be the middle of the night in Australia, so fair play. We're talking about cutting across all different time zones. Many teams are riding at altitude as well. But look at this group is now starting to split. Lauren Stevens and Lisa Brennauer now on the front. And for the first time, we're seeing Leah Dixon heading to the front of this group as well, really applying some pressure, and the group thinning out as a result.
Yeah, well, look at this effort from Liana Lippert, a former German road race champion from Team Sunweb. Just wants to stretch the legs a little bit, opens up a gap. She's reeled back by the peloton. But this climb, it's a real awkward change in gradient because it's neither, really steep or really flat. It kind of ebbs and flows and changes, and it really disrupts your rhythm. It's a really hard one to get on top of. As you see, the Prix de la Combatif is Lisa Brennauer of Sarah Tizet WNT for today. So great news for the German road race champion. As we've seen another chip off the front here from Sarah Gigante.
Well, Gigante has flown. As you said, that award has been voted on social media, so good riding by Lisa Brennauer. But look at this. This is a big effort. You can see this. This is 100% commitment. The 19-year-old, as you said, the time trial champion of Australia, she knows how to ride this solo kind of effort. She's coming towards the top of this climb, but I think this is an effort to try and win this race. This isn't about gathering points towards the polka dot jersey. This is a potential race-winning move. But Lauren Stevens, her teammate, is actually on the front of this bunch, trying to bring her back. That's a little bit of a surprise. Leah Dixon is there as well. Very, very interesting tactics here from Team Tibco Silicon Valley. I'm wondering what the score is here, unless the plan was for her to go off the front and just make things difficult for everybody. But very, very interesting tactics here. It is still Lauren Stevens bringing back her teammate. Well, that has got me a little bit vexed here, Hannah, as we see a power-up being used towards the top of the climb. Sorry, Joss Loudon making sure she gets maximum points again. Look at that consummate use of a feather power-up, making her 9.5 kilograms lighter. She takes the points at the top of the climb, but it is really starting to split. But interesting tactics there from Tibco. What do you make of that, Hannah?
Yeah, that's a little bit unusual, and basically that just helped the other riders, the likes of Joss Loudon, Leah Dixon, Bujak and Lisa Brennauer, to get back in terms with Sarah Gigante. So not the most brilliant tactics used by Team Tibco. On the other hand, Joss Loudon using a textbook power up there to take maximum points in the Queen of the Mountains, and just using the draft from Lauren Stevens to get back in terms. But very unusual. I'm sure there will be words from the sports director post-race.
Well, they certainly will, but look at the face of Joss Loudon as she's got into that super tuck, gasping for breath. You can just see the distress on her face at the effort that she made there. It was an absolutely superb effort. She's really, the team drops have rubber stamped their authority in the Queen of the Mountains classification, and we have an elite group of riders gone clear. Lauren Stevens, Sarah Gigante, Leah Dixon, all from Team Tibco. Maybe that was the plan. Maybe they wanted to force the pace, and they knew that the other riders couldn't keep up because they've managed to extract themselves off the front. And it is April Tacey of drops, 2 seconds with Bujak just behind, Chloe Dygart there as well. So this group looks like it may come back together as they whoosh down towards the finish. Hannah, only 3Ks to go. What an exciting race this has been.
Yeah, well, whatever Team Tibco Silicon Valley Bank's tactics were, it's certainly paying off now. Can they try and work together now? You can just see some tips being given to Leah Dixon. She's making the most of the being able to freewheel, picking up the pace. And they do have that 2.5 second gap over the chasing riders of Tacey, and Lisa Brennau has been distanced as well. But this is brilliant now by Dixon, Stevens and Gigante.
Well, Anna Henderson has got in the mix as well. So still 2 seconds to that group just behind. Henderson, Gigante, Stevens. There is the Classement Montagne, the Queen of the Mountains classification. As we know, drops dominating that today. Superb performance primarily from Joss Loudon. Drops have 40 to Ceratizit WNT Pro Cycling with 22, and a distant third in that classification, Tipco at the moment. But there's under 2Ks to go, and the group is coming back together straight over the top. One of the riders from LA BTC Ljubljana, and that is Bujak goes through at the moment. This is a very interesting situation. The group has swelled. Chloe Dygert has got back in contact, as has Joss Loudon. What a superb finale we've got now. And essentially it's a straight line. Gently meanders a couple of times, then that harsh right-hander towards the finish. Oh, who is going to win this one? It's going to be all about timing and which power-ups these riders have got as well.
Yeah, only 11 riders left in this group. It's a real elite mix. The likes of Shara Gillow has been distanced, Urska Zigart and Lucinda Brand. She's 23 seconds back, but just look at Lisa Brennau taking on some hydration. Still pedaling at high watts, but looking very, very focused indeed. She'll be thinking about the finish, but see a burrito power-up being dropped there as we go underneath the Flamme Rouge. 800 metres to go now, Matt.
Well, the Flamme Rouge has been passed. 800 metres now, 11 riders in this front group. Romy Kasper, Lauren Stevens, Leanne Lippert, Shara Gigante, Lisa Brennau, the world time trial champion, Chloe Dygert of 2020. They're just heading over the bridge here. Not too long to go. Remember, the finishing line here comes very, very late in terms of visuals. When are the riders going to launch? 500 metres now to go on this stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. History being made here on the Caspat course, the leg breaker, and it's broken the will of many, many riders. But we have an elite group now coming towards the finish. That is the picture-in-picture of the German road champion from Ceratizit WNT, Lisa Brennau. But Leah Dixon opens up early. Dixon goes with a aero power-up. Dixon opens up a little bit of a gap. Anna Henderson is there too. Romy Kasper not too far away. There is the finishing line. Dixon still has the lead. An amazing ride by the Maillot Jaune, which is being overtaken on the line. It is so close. Drops look like they've got it. So close. What Tacey takes it in the end with a superb sprint. A lunge at the last. April Tacey of Drop Cycling takes stage win at number 2, and boy is she delighted.
Wow, what a
finish.
Tacey, fantastic. She can't believe it. You can just see her there mouthing, yes, she's so happy. Second stage win in this virtual Tour de France. What a start for this 19-year-old rider from Great Britain. Great start to her professional debut. She wipes the sweat from her face, and that was perfection, Matt.
It was absolutely superb. Leah Dixon opened it up, and it looked as if she'd stolen a bit of a march. Here we are coming into the last sort of kilometre or so. Last few hundred metres. Sorry, this isn't a slow motion. This is the poursuivant, the chasing group behind with Corin Rivera. Remember, there's only 11 riders in that front group, but I think there's actually a group just in front because the remnants of that front split will have crossed the line very, very shortly. This is probably group number 3 on the road with Corin Rivera. We've got Lucinda Brand in the group just behind. So this is the group going under a kilometre to go. So this group fairly distanced down the road, but no doubt about the winner. And it was very, very tight at the end. It's a Great Britain 1-2, in fact. April Tacey took the win from Anna Henderson. And Lauren Stevens was in third place, the first place rider from Team Kipco Silicon Valley. As we look at Corin Rivera, still looking to score some points here maybe. But I think Rivera out on the road. Let's just have a little look at this group. Corin Rivera, she's in a group which is at 2 minutes behind. And there are points on offer for the first 2 or 3 riders in this group. So the first 5 riders from this group will score points towards the general classification. A couple of cheeky little burritos being dropped. And as we said before, Hannah, every single rider in the top 25 counts here. So that's why we're seeing these riders really going for the finish.
Yeah, and it's, all those important points towards the team classification. It really could make the difference, especially when we get to the final stage on the Champs-Elysees. But look at this, Canyon Schramm opening up for a big sprint. Looks like Jessica Corin Rivera wanting to try and take some points as well as she just overtakes her teammate there. Anna Henderson obviously already took second place on the stage, so plenty of vital points going towards Team Sunweb. But what an exciting
Indeed.
finish that has been today.
That was great. I think that was Alexis Ryan actually from Canyon Shram taking the position there, just in front of a fellow countrywoman. And this is the slow motion replay. Look at Tacey here, just in the centre. She goes straight through the centre, and literally within the last 10 or 15 metres of the stage, she takes the win. And I think she's got a power up in use as well. She has so great use of the aero power up. That is the power up that everybody wants as they're heading towards the finish. Just makes their drag coefficient 25% better, cutting through the wind. But April Tacey, well, she delivers the power, but the perfect drop of a power up to there is confirmation. They've got April Tacey takes the win for drops. Anna Henderson of Sunweb, the best performance by that team in second place. Lauren Stevens in third. Leah Dixon fourth. Chloe Dygert, another solid performance by the world champion in fifth for Team 2020. Romy Kasper, Lisa Brennauer, aggressive today, awarded the Prix Combative. Lippert, Loudon and Lena Bujak rounding out the top 10. That was the elite group of riders that headed towards the finish. But no doubt about the win today. Another superb performance by, well, obviously the standout rider so far in this race, in this virtual Tour de France, in the women's, April Tacey.
Yeah, it was...
I'm exhausted, Hannah.
I know. So much excitement. I think we need to wear heart rate monitors ourselves and see what our heart rate gets up to in such excitement of racing. But it was apparent to me that you saw that Dixon had a aero power up going into the finish there. She actually pressed it a lot earlier than what Tacey did, and Tacey still had it going across the finish line. So it was just that, it was almost like, a virtual lunge that really helped Tacey manage to take her second stage victory in the virtual Tour de France there. Stevens as well able to just overhaul ahead of Dixon as well. But despite not having a power up, Anna Henderson from Team Sunweb having a great finish there.
Well, she is an exceptionally good sprinter, very, very powerful rider, clearly adapted to racing on Zwift, very, very fast, got herself in that front group and positioned herself well. But I just can't believe how well April Tacey has adapted it. Again, she used it to perfection. I did think that that early little power up by Leah Dixon would have actually, it was Leah Dixon, of course, opened it up early on. Was quite an interesting one because she opened up several lengths, but right at the last, that later use of the power-up seemed to play into the hands of the winner. Here she is again, 19 years of age from Team Drops, your stage winner today on stage
April
4.
Tacey, well, 1 week ago, the world didn't really know who you are. Now they definitely know who you are. You've won another stage of the virtual Tour de France. Give me your emotions on another stage victory.
It feels amazing to win on the stage. That race was really, really hard. Coming into that last hill, I was about nearly lost it. And then I made it up on the downhill. And I just can't quite believe I won the sprint.
Well, you won the sprint very well. You beat some of the top riders in the world to win that sprint. Tell me, during the winter, you broke your knee in December and you've had to nurse your way back. Was Zwift a platform that you used as a rehabilitation to try and get that knee strong?
Yeah, Zwift was really helpful with my rehab. I was able to use Zwift and do some training and races on there.
So over the last 2 weekends, you've got 2 stage victories and you've also had a 3rd place. You've got one more race, I guess, next weekend. Are we going to see you on the Champs-Élysées? Yeah,
definitely. You're going to see me there. It's going to be amazing to actually ride the Champs-Élysées. Actually, like even though it's virtual, it's be amazing to get to ride it.
Okay, well, many congratulations on winning stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. Team Drops, April Tacey, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I think, Hannah, she is still perhaps in a state of a disbelief there. She really couldn't quite believe it. We've just got the men racing at the moment as well. Well, that was just a little bit of a picture-in-pitch. The men have got a couple of kilometres under their wheels. But it will be great to see her on the Champs-Élysées. She's clearly going to have a little bit of a rest now, probably not racing tomorrow. Remember, in the women's field, riders can only race a maximum of 4 races, so probably a good idea to rest her. And she's young as well, only 19 years of age.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, if you just heard in the interview there that she broke her kneecap, I think, from such a horrific injury and having to come back from that, something positive has come from it. It shows that the experience of Tacey and learning the game and how to race on here is really paying off. And yeah, terrific result for the young British rider.
It certainly is. It drops up into second, but no doubt about the leading team. It is still Team Tipco Silicon Valley Bank at the head of affairs, the American squad, with 277 points ahead of Drops, who have now moved up to be serious contenders here. They have so much strength in depth, but importantly, they know how to race on this platform. They know how to use power-ups. They know how to ride the draft better than anybody else at the moment. But Canyon SRAM still leading the green jersey classification, the Maillot Vert. They have got 203 points. Didn't have quite as many riders in that front group today, only a couple, but Team Tipco Silicon Valley have closed the gap to 154. Drops in third with 121 there. So Canyon SRAM will again be wearing the green jersey heading into stage 5 next weekend. And I'm quite looking forward to that. I'm not so much looking forward to riding up Mont Ventoux in a virtual world. But anyway, let's move on to the Queen of the Mountains classification. As we know, Drops still will be in that jersey heading on to Mont Ventoux. And how cool is that, wearing a mountains jersey on that iconic climb in the virtual tour. They have 40 points ahead of Ceratizet WNT Pro Cycling. And then at Team Tipco, quite a distant third with 9 points, but a lot more points on offer because, of course, the climb of the Mont Ventoux up to Chalet Reynard, that's where they go to. There'll be a lot more points in offer in that classification, so we could see some big changes all round. So, Hannah, just a quick sum up before we move on to the men's racing. We thought that climb, although not a spectacular climb at all, just because of the nature of the race, where it was set, we thought it would play a big part. We thought it'd be pivotal, and it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And, you know, the riders who were distanced on the climb the first time managed to recover and get back on. But it was the second time over that climb we saw, you know, a real elite group with Team Tipco Silicon Valley Bank, you know, really dominating it. But it did come back to that bunch sprint and Drops, you know, with Joss Loudon and April Tacey in that front group, timing it to perfection. Tacey, as you said, did get distance on the climb, but yeah, had enough left for that sprint and had the all-important aero boost. Thumbs up there from Lisa Brennauer. But you can just see the flurry of aero boosts at the finish line. And Dixon, a little bit disappointed there that she didn't get the win on the stage victory on stage 4 in Caspat.
Well, there we go. The women's race done and dusted. Next up for the women will be stage 5. Next up we have the men. Welcome to stage 5 for the men of the first ever, stage 4 should I say. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France here on the Zwift platform. We have an exciting course ahead. And this is the situation at the top of the classification so far. NTT are in the Maillot Jaune. They've had a very consistent race so far. They've 193 points. They're ahead of Rally Cycling with 156. And then Trek Segafredo are third with 127 points. NTT also top the rankings in the Maillot Vert, the green jersey points classification with, well, look at that, nearly double the points of Mitchelton Scott, 161 to 85. Third in that classification, Team CCC with 65 points. Now, in the Maillot Appoint, the polka dot jersey, King of the Mountains, it is Israel Startup Nation with 17, but a narrow margin of 1 point to Alpecin Phoenix with 16 and EF Education First with 10 points. And the final classification will be the Meilleur Jeune, the best young rider wearing the white jersey. And again, 3 jerseys here for NTT. They lead that classification by 3 points. The best under 25 rider, 24 points to the good. Ineos with 21, Trek Segafredo with 19. And as you can see, just below me, in the square below, although you might think we're in the same room given the wallpaper we've got, it is Hannah Walker along for the ride again today. We'll just run through the teams, Hannah, then we'll get to the racing. Great to have you alongside me again today. But there's the teams: EF Education First, Arkea, Matthias Frank, great climber for AG2R Le Mondial, he could go well today. Jack Haig, Nick Schultz, Freddie Ovett, watch out for him. Piccoli as well. He's won on the Zwift before on the climbs. Look out for Nathan Haas. He quite likes a bit of Zwift racing, the Australian for Cofidis. Michael Shaw, the Swiss rider, good rouleur for CCC. Gregor Boll for Bahrain Merida. Watch out for him. He has won on the Zwift platform before as well. So we have 22 teams and 88 riders. NTT will be leading, of course, Trek Segafredo with Ryan Mullen. Brian Cockard, watch out for him for B&B Hotels at Vital Concept. Very, very fast finisher indeed. We've got a starter listed there, but unfortunately they will not be making the start lineup today. And there is the route that we have. It is 45.8 kilometers. It's called Kaspat, which basically means leg breaker. There are some other meanings which we'll go into. There's one sprint per lap en route towards the Maillot Vert, the green jersey competition, and 2 climbs, the Aqueduct and the Petit KOM. And we're already en route. We've got, 10Ks already done. It's Radio Tour time. What's said, PK?
La course est lancée, située sur le territoire français, un parcours vallonné. 2 tours de circuit à effectuer pour une distance totale de 45,8 km, 23 équipes représentées. Hello and welcome to stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. The race is currently underway on the French territory, a hilly stage today. 2 laps to be covered for a total distance of 45.8 kilometers, 23 teams represented.
Well, thank you very much, as said PK. I'll reintroduce you again, Hannah. We had a spectacular women's race. That climb towards the back end has really determined what's happened in this race. It's a real pivotal point. But it's exactly the same course for the men. 2 laps of this circuit. And what are your thoughts on how this one will go based on what we saw in the women's race?
Well, I've just been keeping a close eye on the start of this race, and the speed is absolutely astronomical. We're at 54 kilometres per hour, and it's not really dipped much under 50 kilometres per hour, so it's a real fast start. Riders and teams wanting to try and maybe shell a few riders before they get to into the sprint and the first king of the mountains of the day. But if any of the men have seen how the women's race went on just a moment ago, they'll be able to have a little idea of what is in store for them. Obviously, riders will have been able to do a recon before today's stage as we go into the first sprint mat of the day on the pavé.
Yep, the first sprint. It looks as if it's Danny Van Poppel and Nathan Haas going for the sprint here. Very, very close indeed. It looks like it's going to be taken. Ooh, it looks like Haas was in second. Danny Van Poppel took the win there. Bit of a change. So Danny Van Poppel, a good ride by him. So that's towards the green jersey competition. And that sprint, given that you're discussing how difficult the race has been in terms of the pace, that has really split things up. Look at the gaps in the field here. But a good sprint by Nathan Haas there from Team Cofidis. A rider who was given they had that lockdown, of course, situation at the Saudi Tour earlier in the year. They were given the Zwift platform to train on within their hotels and has really taken to it. But Danny Van Poppel there, a good sprint by him from Circus 1-2 Group Goubert, and there he is right on cue. And unsurprisingly, on the patio, it's a warm day in Northern Europe today. Opted for no top there, Hannah.
Yeah, you can just see how hot it can be. Racing virtually, riders will have fans to try and keep their core body temperature as cool as possible, so it doesn't affect their performance too much. It's never a nice feeling when your body starts to overheat, and it really does make differences to your performance. But I was just having a look through the peloton and the riders. Just a few seconds opening up in between the top riders, around 50 riders in very close proximity with only 1 or 2 seconds separating them. But it's just trying to get back on terms with this leading group led by twos of Cofidis.
Indeed. Well, we'll just run through the classification. Well, we know who is leading the classification team-wise, but we're just moving on to the foot of the King of the Mountains, should I say. The big attack has gone already by Daniel Turek. So Turek goes off the front for Israel Startup Nation. They are the team that is leading the King of the Mountains competition. They clearly want to defend that. Freddie Ovet is the rider wearing the jersey. But Turek has gone well. Look at this. Valentin Madua from FDJ is trying to close the gap. These 2 runners have opened up a big gap here on the first of our climbs today. It is the Aqueduct KOM, the Pont du Gard. And Laurent Madua, so Valentin Madua, it's his birthday today, but Turek goes again, neck and neck. Great little close-up of the riders there. It looks like it was Turek that took the win there for maximum points. But Valentin Madua, a very, very prodigiously talented young French rider, getting second, and a good way to celebrate your birthday. Well, I don't know if it's a good way to celebrate your birthday, but I guess he is riding the virtual Tour de France, and I guess there'll be a bit of a cake afterwards for him.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously, taking confidence from that King of the Mountain there. wants to try and vie for maybe a virtual Tour de France stage win. I mean, it's early doors yet, but the duo here do have a 4-second gap to the chasing peloton. But great little tussle there from Turek and Madouar, as we can just see Turek in his pain cave, looking very comfortable indeed, pushing a very high amount of watts there, just over 500 watts, as he opens up a gap to Madouar.
Interesting there. He's just been swept up. It looks like Quinn Simmons riding now for Trek Segafredo. Didn't actually ride at the under 23 level. He's the current junior world road race champion. As you see, Cameron Worth moves to the front. There's the confirmation of the first climb, the Aqueduct climb. Third category affair. Daniel Turek of Israel Startup Nation in first, and then Valentin Madouar in second from Groupama FDJ, and then Krieger in third position, and one solitary point for him. But this group really has thinned out with the successive sprint, the successive climb, and also the combination of the very, very high pace that you described earlier on. It really is ferocious out there today as the crowd go wild at the top. A little yellow jersey. I saw one of the lady avatars there wearing a polka dot dress as well. The attention to detail, absolutely sensational here at the virtual Tour de France. But as things settle down briefly, because this is going to be action all the way, let's just go through the riders and the jerseys. Now, 3 jerseys are on the shoulders of NTT today. The yellow jersey is being worn by the Dane, Michael Volgren, to watch out for him. He is still in this front group. And Michael Gogol, the Austrian, is wearing the green jersey. And Michael Karbel of Denmark, the neo-pro for NTT, young 23-year-old, he is wearing the white jersey of Best Young Rider. And Freddie Ovet is wearing the jersey of the King of the Mountains classification. So watch out for him. He is a real expert rider on the Zwift platform. Very, very dangerous indeed. And was certainly keeping his powder dry earlier on. But it was quite clear to me by the big effort there, Hannah, that Turek put in, that they've clearly got riders designated for certain roles in this race. And that was a really, really good example, because he was only matched, wasn't he, by Madouar?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if we look at the way that Ovet raced last week, in a photo finish, he finished second on stage 2, as we get a little look at him in his pain cave with opting for double fanage. I think teams need to come into this with a real set a game plan of as you would in real life racing, what riders' roles are. It looks like Israel Cycling Startup Nation, are wanting to try and keep Ovet as fresh as possible. He's sitting in a perfect position to gain benefits from the draft, and Turek obviously on King of the Mountain duties today. But they've got another little, a good little pocket rocket in their roster. James Pickley, the 28-year-old Canadian rider. He was 16th on stage 2, and he's actually had an epic KOM win in his Zwift Racing Palmeiras. So they've got a great team, has the Israel Startup Nation.
They certainly have. And of course, Freddie Ovet, looking a little bit like Mario Cipollini circa late 1990s, early noughties there, is issued the sleeves. We'll have to see if ZADA, the Zwift anti-doping authority, have a little bit of a view on whether riders need sleeves. But we do know that in-game they have to wear helmets in-game, and they have to wear socks as well. So sartorial elegance is very, very important in Zwift, as is avatar safety. As we look at, for the very first time, Michael Volgren alongside his teammate. So with the headband on, that is Michael Volgren, that lovely shock of blonde hair for the Dane, and alongside him is Michael Karbel, just on the right-hand side. Sorry, that's Michael Gogol, actually, the Austrian, who again has won on Zwift as well. So both of these riders know Zwift very, very well indeed. And of course, NTT are a team that were heavily involved over the last few years in the Zwift Academy. And we're now at the bottom of the climb. This is the Petit KOM. And as we described in the women's race earlier on, it's not a particularly ferocious climb when you look at the other climbs we have in-game on the Zwift platform, especially looking towards next week when we head up Mont Ventoux. But this is the Petit KOM. But it was pivotal in the women's race, and I'm expecting to see similar damage in this race perhaps. It's 2.7 kilometres in length, the average gradient being 4%, which isn't too steep, but it does go up in steps. And as you were describing earlier on, Hannah, it really is one of those climbs that breaks the rhythm, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard to get into that rhythm that riders like to be in, with the changing gradient constantly. Some parts it's 2%, 3%. As you just see the effort being made by Quinn Simmons of Trek Segafredo. once the gradient starts to ramp up, it's really hard to get back on top of the gear, try and find a nice steady rhythm, and something that these riders, it's also getting on top of your power, your heart rate not kind of going too much into the red, and sort of producing a lot of lactate into the legs, but also being able to stay with the bunch as well, because of course once you're dropped from the bunch, it's mightily hard to get back into the front group. So it's as we saw in the women's race, it was a whittling down process, and a lot of fireworks again on the final ascent. So I'm sure we'll be seeing something similar in the men's race. There's a few power-ups are starting to be dropped already.
Yeah, a little invisibility power-up there. That's my favourite power-up. That's the ghost. That makes you invisible for 10 seconds. So in-game, the other riders can't see you, disappear from view. We have seen it in some community racing on Zwift, and riders have viewed that in a bunch sprint. That's very interesting indeed, when you don't know who you're sprinting against. But Michael Volgren just used an aero power-up. That was quite interesting as well. But that's, even on a climb like this, that will be of some benefit. So once the gradient gets very, very steep, so over 10 or 12%, that's when the aero benefit is kind of almost negligible. But when it's at 5 or 6%, you're moving along at 25 k's an hour, there is still a little bit of a benefit there. But there's been an attack off the front from Turek again. Unsurprisingly, the Czech rider moves clear for Israel's startup nation. But he's gone early this time. He's gone very, very long, and he's got to work very, very hard to keep it going at the top. 167 beats a minute his heart rate is at the moment. Well, that's absolutely brutal. And a quick reminder, if anybody wants to drill a little bit deeper down into the stats of these riders, head over to Zwift.com/raceview, and that gives you a view of the map where the riders are en route. And also you can pick teams and riders and look at their stats. But this is the face of Turek. Looking good though, and totally committed here, Hannah.
Yeah, looking very, very good, and just look at how he's opting to stay in the saddle. He's just got just less than a kilometre to go until he crests the top of this Petit KOM, but looking very, very good indeed. He's opened up a 6-second gap to the peloton, so this is looking very good. Michael Valgren not interested in trying to close the gap to Turek, but a few little bits of daylight opening up within that peloton as Valgren pushes on the pace.
Yeah, Volgren happy to set the pace on the front. Nathan Haas just there for confidence in the red and white as we move up the climb here. We're coming towards the top here. Just see the little castle, the chateau there. Chapeau to the chateau, the French drapeau flying in this beautiful breeze here. Of course, this world based on Brittany and all that's best about the south of France. It really is something quite wonderful. And this is a wonderful performance by Daniel Turek. 9.1 watts a kilo. A superb effort as he gets towards the top of this climb. He's got about 250 metres to go. And he's been tapping out between 550 and 650 watts. And again, that is making my legs ache, Hannah. And I'm just sat down commentating.
Well, as we were saying before in the women's race, you're just looking at the numbers. If you want to try and replicate the numbers that these riders are doing, go and take a ride on the Étape de Tours as Turek crests the top. He takes maximum points in that King of the Mountain. Try and replicate the numbers that these riders are putting out and see how long you can do it for, because it is so hard. But look at the effort now. The rider in second place, Nathan Haas, putting out great numbers trying to close the gap. The rider from Cofidis, he's at altitude actually currently in Lavinia with his team. He saw his teammate Elia Viviani racing yesterday and just saw and got a taste of how hard it is as Turek now goes down the descent.
It was his teammate Freddie Ovett who overtook him straight away, just went straight over the top. We've got 4 riders now just moving clear. It has split up a little bit, but good riding by Nathan Haas. I know Nathan Haas very, very well indeed, and he was quite frustrated when he first started to ride on Zwift. Couldn't understand why he was regularly beaten, but he's done a lot of the community races specifically to get used to the nuances of riding on Zwift, because there's no doubt about his engine, his racecraft. But the more you race on Zwift, the more you get attuned to it. And it's great to see him up in the mix and at the sharp end. He's got some great results in the past. A former winner of the Tour of Britain, 4th place in Amstel Gold for the Australian. There's somebody else goes straight over the top there. Just not one of the Groupama riders. But a little bit of an easing of the pace, but an elite group now forming. And I think there's only about 30 odd riders in the front now as a result of the real pressure that's being applied. And again, Hannah, as we saw in the women's race, this climb has really kind of made the cream come to the top, as we see Israel Startup Nation 24 points to the good ahead of Alpecin Phoenix, who did not score.
Yeah, that has put detriment to Alpecin Phoenix. It was very, very close, only 1 point separating the two teams. So Israel Startup Nation really come in with all guns blazing, trying to take as many points as possible for that King of the Mountains classification. It's notable we've got 3 of the jerseys in this front group, with Michael Gogol with the green jersey on his shoulders. We've got the yellow jersey from Michael Valgren, and the King of the Mountains with Freddie Ovett. We're just trying to see if we can see the white jersey on the shoulders of Michael Carbell of NTT Pro Cycling, but it seems that he has potentially lost touch. Oh no, he's sitting in second wheel, so he is in this front group. So all our jersey wearers are in this group, Matt. It's great to see.
Yep. This little group at the front is actually quite long. It's about 7 or 8 seconds long. And then there's a big gap. There's Ben Gasteur, is the rider at the back of this group for AG2R Le Mondial. Then the gap opens up to Bennett, the American rider for EF Education First. So it has split, and Michael Valgren in that yellow jersey with Michael Gogol for company. Happy to keep the pace high at the front. And sometimes it is the best place to be. It's worth investing a little bit of effort on the front and then just slowly drifting back. And one of the things and the nuanced things about riding on Zwift is the fact that you really need to kind of understand how to apply the pressure to the pedals. Rather than ease off suddenly, if you gently ease off the power, you can just float around the group, make the benefit or take the benefit of the draft. And going through the Flamme Rouge here, of course, they'll take the bell. There's still a lap to go, so 23.8 kilometers to go. But the more you ride on this platform, the more you get used to getting used to the draft, which has been tweaked as well. The engineers in game have tweaked a little bit with the algorithm to make riding in the slipstream of other riders or within the bunch just a little bit nearer what it is like in real life. It's not quite the same as in real life, but it's a little bit nearer than we normally see on Zwift racing, which I think is good because so many of these riders, Hannah, aren't used to racing on Zwift. I think it's important that there's like an adaptation process, hence tweaking with that kind of drafting algorithm.
Yeah, and it does take time to learn and find that sweet spot of where you can take the pressure off the pedals and where you can get a little bit of respite and make it easier for yourself. But it is great, having this draft effect as you would do in real life. And it saves around 20 to 30% of your energy as well. So it's really important to try and make the most of it, especially with such a lengthy course like today, 46 kilometers of racing. We've got 22.9 kilometers until the finish. So it's important to try and make the most of the draft effect.
It certainly is. These riders know how to do it. We've got a real mix of riders in this group, and there are actually 18 riders in this front group. Nathan Haas is the rider just at the back, at the lower part of your screen, and it is 13 seconds to the next group, which has been led by Owen Dool and Louvel of Arkea. Now, we saw in the women's race earlier on a very similar situation. We saw a split on the climb with a group moving clear of a similar size, in fact, but the next group on the road did get back in contention, and the gap is holding steady at the moment. It is Michael Shah of CCC at 12 seconds leading that group behind. So there is still a chance, isn't there, Hannah? If that group actually work, they will get in contact. We've got Matt Heyman coming up next, so we'll just pause for a minute and listen to what Matt Heyman has to say. The winner, of course, of Paris-Roubaix a few years ago, and one of the direct sportifs at Mitchelton Scott, and rode a lot on Zwift during his recuperation from a broken arm before he won Paris-Roubaix. So one of the professional DSs out there that really does know this the platform inside and out.
Hi, Matthew Heyman here from Mitchelton Scott. I'm the Director Sportif for Tour de France Virtual. Now, this is normally my pain cave, and it's been turned into the team car or the race hub for these races. Mitchelton Scott got off to a great start in the stage 1. Daryl Impey and Nick Schultz picking up a lot of points, and we'll be back at it in stage 3 and 4. Coming to the new world of France, nobody has raced on these roads before. It's going to be very exciting. Stage 3 looks like a flat stage, something for the sprinters. It'll be imperative for us to try and pick up points at the intermediate sprints along the way. Stage 4, we have a climb coming very close to the finish line. Nick Schultz is back again and hoping that he's able to get another podium like he did on stage 1. And again, we need to get a number of riders in the points if we're going to narrow that gap down to NTT.
And there we go. Interesting insight from Matt Heyman. He really does. He generally trains on Zwift as well. It's an amazing story. There's a video online you can find about the background story to Matt Heyman. Very late in his career, breaking his elbow at a key part of the season as Ryan Mullen goes clear now. This is an amazing ride, actually. Well, we'll talk a little bit about Matt Heyman a little bit later, but Ryan Mullen, the former double road and time trial champion, of Ireland now moving clear for Trek Segafredo. They went into today third team on the general classification with 127. And Hannah, you don't want to let a guy like this go, Keith, because he is an absolute machine when it comes to the individual time trial. And the climbs today, well, they're not super steep. This is his sort of terrain. Look at this. He's holding just under 500 watts. Incredible power by Ryan Mullen.
Just look how steady and solid his upper body is as well. All the power going through those legs. And Ryan Mullen was actually one of the riders you and I were talking about before the race started, saying he could be actually a little bit of a dark horse for today's stage. And he's wanted to go for a long one. He's opened up a 9.5 second gap to the bunch behind. It's Lawson Craddock, the rider, who is trying to chase that, and ever so slightly he's just eking out 1 second, 2 seconds from the chasers. Looking very, very comfortable, Ryan Mullen, and it kind of suits this type of course. It actually suits this kind of rider to try and maintain the watts and not have too many spikes in effort.
Exactly, it will suit him down to the ground, and if you're out on your own in front, you don't need to kind of back off or press on for any of the sprints. As you said, there's none of those kind of spikes. It's just a smooth, even effort, and the vast majority of today's course, this is the Caspat course, is actually flat. It's just those two climbs. It's a 400-metre climb that they've still got to go over again, the Aqueduct climb, and then the Petit KOM, which is 2.7 kilometres at 4%, and a rider just trying to go over the top here. That's a Damien Touze. Fair play to Cofidis in this front group. They've got Dimitri Claes in there, Nathan Haas, Damien Touze and Jesper Hansen. And this is the group that's just made contact. So a couple of other riders have now got back in the move, swelling this group to well over 20 riders. They definitely eased off, but it's not just about power here. That was a really interesting tactical point in the race. Ryan Mullen read the situation well. He sensed there was an easing off because the group were coming up behind. He seized the moment, textbook style, and went clear.
Yeah, and as that group has eased up, we now have a group of 36 riders. Which rider, which team is going to be the team to chase Ryan Mullen back? Ryan Mullen really does have the upper hand here. He's maintaining a great watts per kilo at 5.9 watts per kilo, so really looking very, very smooth. I think he's been on a training camp recently, so got some good form. How's it going to affect his performance towards the latter stages? But looking very, very comfortable right now.
Certainly is, just hovering above 450 watts. There's the stats, watts on the bottom left, RPM, that's revolutions a minute. It's not showing his heart rate, but he's moving along at a rate of 46 Ks an hour. And if stats are your thing, or you just want another level of information and data and metrics, of course, Zwift has got a lot of those. We have the Tour de France virtual platform to look at. So head over to Zwift.com/raceview. Right on cue, thank you, producer. Just at the bottom of your screen there, so Zwift.com/raceview, and you can look at the stats of the race, both men's and women's. You can look at the teams, you can look at the individual riders, and you look at where the various groups are out on the road, and also the King of the Mountains, the points classifications, and the sprints. And believe you me, there are groups all over the road at the moment. 35 minutes of racing done, and we have this big group, but they are chasing Ryan Mullen, but the gap has now come down 8.2 seconds, and Michael Volgren with Michael Gogol looking very, very comfortable at the moment, keeping themselves cool with what looks like to be an industrial-sized fan. And I think, looking at that location, they appear to be at their service course in Italy.
Yeah, it's great that the team are all together racing in this virtual Tour de France. We saw them yesterday as well, all together in the same room. They're doing the same again today, and it does make the communication between the riders, your sports director, any of your helpers, your soigneurs. It's much easier to communicate when you're together in real life. I know a few of the teams are using different communication methods, the likes of WhatsApp and Discord, to communicate between themselves. Talk about the tactic as you would do in real life using race radio. Sports directors can be in the virtual team car as well, so they can be giving feedback to the riders about what's going on in the race as they would do in real life. But Mullen's gap now coming down to 5 seconds. So he'll be trying to hang on for as long as possible, but the chase is coming from Tanel Kangert.
Yeah, Tanel Kangert of EF Pro Cycling. He's got Lawson Craddock also, so we have at least two riders from EF Pro Cycling. And as you mentioned earlier on, you can just see the group behind. There are 38 riders out in front, including Ryan Mullen. And then we have a big gap of over a minute to the next group. So the winner will come today, the stage winner at least, will come from this group of 38 riders, but I think Mullen's time out in front is going to be limited here. It's a great effort. And sometimes in racing, in real life and on Zwift, it's about seizing the opportunity, isn't it? Sometimes you feel that the time is right, and sometimes you don't necessarily, although most teams have a plan, sometimes one of the most important things to go by is instinct as well. And riding on instinct sometimes is an exciting way to race, and it's an important kind of aspect of your armory to sometimes cultivate and really work on, isn't it? It's like instinct is so important.
Yeah, it's a real talent, I think, being able to read a race as Mullen of Trek Segafredo's swept up by the bunch. It's a real talent to be able to read a race and to know, the perfect time to attack or which move is the best one to go with. We do have some real elite riders who are capable to do that. And Mullen just seizing the opportunity, saw his time and thought, this is the one for me. But it could be another opportunity if he can just recover, hydrate himself before this climb to recover again for the finish.
Exactly, that's a big effort. He was out in front for about 3 or 4 kilometres there, was Ryan Mullen. 25 years of age now, as we see 2 riders from Mitchelton Scott move to the front. You can see the detail on their jerseys wonderfully rendered here in Zwift, and they're a beautiful view of the rolling French countryside, inspired in part by Brittany, in part by the Burgundy region as well. We go through the sunflower fields, we see the agriculture, we see a little cheeky tractor on the right hand side. I'm actually not too sure what tractor is in French. It's probably something along the lines of tracteur. I could be right, but no, some lovely French scenery here, and even some rather excitable avatars. We just needed a little bit of a French baguette and maybe some wine. And an interesting discussion about the meaning of the name of this race. It is called Casse-Pattes, which literally means leg breaker, but when you drill a little bit further down, as we look at Sean Bennett, it actually means the difficult parts of a course. So the climbs, the descents, the technical aspect. Also, it actually means strong alcohol. I'm not too sure what strong alcohol is in this particular region, but I would imagine it would be a lovely deep red wine, or maybe a pastis in the village square.
I don't know about you, Matt, but I think this is actually becoming my new favourite world. Previously, it was Wildtopia, just because of its, unlikeliness in the real world of riding through a volcano and the lights. But I'm loving this world of what Zwift have been able to do. And just picking out the most well-known features of France. We just saw on the left-hand side just a minute ago the arch and needle. So it's really great how they've been able to capture the best parts of France, as you said. Just maybe missing a nice cheese baguette.
So maybe the producer can pass us a virtual cheese baguette as the group 38 riders strong now rolls. Again, look at the speed there, still 48 kilometres an hour as we just passed by this little lake on the right hand side, the lovely Bois, the forest to the left. And of course you can ride in this world if you're on the Zwift platform. If you have a subscription, jump on, you can ride L'Etape Virtuelle. Either use your Zwift companion app to access one of the events, or you can go to zwift.com/events and you can ride this very world today. And then next week, which is super exciting, as we look at Rob Britton from Rally Cycling just tapping along there, just under 400 watts. You can ride up Mont Ventoux next Saturday, and on Sunday, yes, you can ride in the virtual Champs-Élysées. I've seen a few stills, some of the images, but the effort that has gone in by the engineering team at Zwift, the designers, is something to behold. This world is great. This part of France is fantastic, but I'm very much looking forward to how Mont Ventoux looks and how the Champs-Élysées looks for stages 5 and 6 of the virtual Tour de France. And there we go. Quick glimpse of the crowd as the bunch moves ever onwards. And NTT still very active, keeping the pace high here, Hannah.
Yeah, NTT have really come into this race and really grabbed it with both hands. They currently have the 3 jerseys on their shoulders: the maillot vert, the green jersey, the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey, and the young riders jersey, with on the shoulders of Michael Carbell. But just taking a look at the team of Rally Cycling, they've got a number of riders in this front group. Pierre-André Cote, the Canadian rider, Rob Britton, who we just saw on our screens just a moment ago. And we mentioned this in the women's race, but they've actually got an indoor specialist, Holden Como, to their team to give them some tips and some help of how to ride and race on Zwift, and it really has paid dividends after their stage win yesterday with Matteo Del Sin. They've also had a big change up of their new website. It's been a real big planning behind the scenes for the rally cycling team. They've saw some actually cool artwork as well. I think you mentioned earlier on, Matt, they've got these little avatars as well that they've been able to make their riders into for their website and their social media channels.
Yeah, it's very, very important for them. They're one of the wildcard invites to this race, one of the pro-continental teams, along with Direct Energy, B&B Hotels, who have joined the field. Of course, all the other teams are World Tour squads, including Team Ineos. And there is Cameron Worth, the Australian. He had a break from professional cycling, rode for Cannondale for a few years, then had several years off, focused on triathlon. And now Cameron Worth has been hired again by Team Ineos, and he is a rider that can produce a lot of power. And he'll be part of the main engine room of Team Ineos. Not too sure exactly what his calendar is for later in the year, but he'll be put to good use leading the peloton, setting a high pace on the climbs, and performed very well the other day when Ineos raced each other. But this is the second intermediate sprint of the day, the Pavé sprint. Who's going to be at the head of affairs? It is Carbell, the wearer of the white jersey, leading the pace through a couple of power-ups being used, a featherweight power-up and a draft power-up. It is Danny Turek actually on the front here. So Turek driving things through, just rounding the corner. It looks like he's going to be overtaken on the line. Is it by Michael Shah of CCC? Oh, I think it was Turek that just took it there. Or was it Shah? It's very, very close indeed. But Daniel Turek clearly wanting to score some more points in that classification as well as the KOM. So fair play to Danny Turek. I would imagine he might be awarded, if the general public thinks so, the most aggressive rider, because he has been, well, working exceptionally hard today.
Yeah, he's having a great race, isn't he? The 27-year-old Czech rider. And as you mentioned about the combativity award, you can head to social media on Twitter for that and vote for the best rider. Who you think has been the most aggressive and deserves the combativity award? Certainly up there with Ryan Mullen's effort, in my opinion. So it's great that the public also get an opportunity to also have a say in the jerseys and the awards that are given out. It's brilliant to see and get them involved.
It certainly is. We'll make sure that you tune in for the final weekend as well. Remember, on the 18th and 19th of July at 1400 BST, Saturday and Sunday, you can watch all the action again, stages 5 and 6. But we're now heading towards the rather pointy end of this stage. It is the virtual Tour de France making history. This is stage 4. We are now deep into the second lap of 2. 45.8 kilometres, the total distance today, 2 laps of 22.9 Ks, and they still have 2 climbs to go. They've got the Aqueduct KOM and the Petit KOM, which does not feel petit at this stage of the race, that is for sure. But 38 riders still in this front group. A couple of riders from EF, Sean Bennett, Lawson Craddock. We've got Mathis Louvel of Arkea. Freddie Ovet is still there from Israel Startup Nation with his teammate Daniel Turek, who's been one of the main protagonists and animators today. 3 riders from NTT, the leading team. They lead the white, they lead the green, they lead the yellow. Gogol, Volgren and Carbell all in this front group. Ben Gasteur there, the Frenchman. And here's another acceleration. It is Volgren, I think. Or Ben Gasteur, should I say. Brunel now clear. So Brunel and Damien Touz swapping turns on the front as they round that final corner on to the viaduct. And Gasteur, 6.2 watts a kilo, driving very, very hard. It looks like it is still Gasteur just in front. Turek on his wheel. It's going to be very, very close on the line here. Is it going to be too? Ooh, Gasteur takes maximum points there for AG2 Le Mondial. So good riding there by the Frenchman, but very solid performance there again by Daniel Turek, the Czech rider, to score another couple of points towards the King of the Mountains classification. So NTT, well, I think he must have had the hardest day. The amount of efforts and kind of intervals that he's had to do is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's certainly has, hasn't he? But he seems to be recovering very, very well from those efforts. It doesn't seem to be phasing him. He's up there now, but just get a picture-in-picture here of Damien Touz of Cofidis. You see his French national champion jersey and medals in the background. So great that he's showing off his victories and memorable moments in his cycling career off in this picture. to the world.
Yeah, Damien too. I think he's got his weights in the background there as well, but there is the national jersey, national champions jersey in the background as well. Damien too is very, very strong rider indeed, looking good, keeping that rhythm high. Champoussin moves to the front, a couple of little power-ups are being used. That burrito was being used there as well. I think a couple of riders getting rid of that because they should get a new one over the top of the climb, which is so important. Coming in towards the finish, they will all want the aero boost, which makes them more aerodynamic, 25% more aerodynamic than normal. As we see Rob Britton there. Was that Ryan Mullen heading off the front again? Nick Schultz is there too. So this group's still 38 riders strong, and there'll be a lot of communication going on there between teams, won't there? Between managers, between riders. Just having a look at the composition of this group, making sure riders are fueled, considering what the power-ups are, and basically holding on for dear life up this climb. And I'm wondering which team, Hannah, are going to really start to set the pace. Do you think it will be, as we saw before, do you think it will be NTT that are going to try and force the pace? They clearly have numbers and riders that are feeling strong.
They've got numbers, but I actually feel like, NTT Pro Cycling are in a very, very good position. They have some great leads in their jerseys and the classements. By the seams of things, it looks like Israel Startup Nation is the team that wants to try and push things on. Trek Segafredo had a fantastic day yesterday with Koen de Kort scoring some very valuable points. So, it shows to me that they are also up for today. But, NTT Pro Cycling will want to cement their positions in these jerseys and the leads. Looking have a very professional setup.
They certainly have. Just looking at, you can just see the numbers on the backs. The first time actually for the virtual Tour de France we've had numbers on the backs of the riders. It really does help identify. It's great for you at home as well to identify these riders. But as we said before, if you want a little bit more detail, make sure you head over to zwift.com/raceview for the added layer of metrics and information that will help your viewing experience here. But won't be long before we head on to the lower slopes of the final climb of the day, the Petit KOM. Alexis Brunel is the rider near the front. Ben Gasteur is there as well. Let's have a look at the stats, still just floating along through this group at around 300 watts. That's the kind of effort it takes just to stay in the bunch, and that's even factoring in the draft. So as you can see, although they are trying to mimic the effects of the draft as we have in the real world, it is still far harder, even riding in a group. The whole effort is far harder than riding in the real world, even on the flat, isn't it, Hannah?
Yeah, it's mightily difficult, and that's why you want to try and stay in the draft as much as possible, save as much energy for the finish. I think a lot of these riders will be thinking about the finish today. They'll just want to try and get over this king of the mountain in as good shape and as a good position as possible, and to try and set things up for the finish. This group is actually very, very big. We've got around 37 riders in this group. 2 riders from Mitchelton Scott. We've got Nick Schultz and Jack Haig in here. Schultz, a level 23 on Zwift, and he had a podium on stage 1. So if he can try and maintain a good position in the peloton, be interesting to see how he can get on and score some vital points for Mitchelton Scott.
Yeah, we've got Chris Hamilton in the mix as well there. But this is a picture of Lawson Craddock, the American. Really, really solid performer. Good time trialist as well. Just sitting mid-group. You can just see the gradient starting to kick up 5% now on the lower slopes of this climb. So 450 watts. But his facial expression, I think, belies the effort that he's actually putting through the pedals at the moment. His jersey unzipped, his EF jersey unzipped, fan on full blast. And it's different. Look, it's interesting, isn't it, Hannah, looking at the different techniques that the riders use to put power through the pedals. A lot of riders opting to get out of the saddle on these shorter kind of climbs and use a high torque but low cadence, as other riders like to sit through and just pedal over a lower gear. It really is horses for courses, isn't it? Because different riders use different techniques, and there's no real ideal kind of style for climbing. It's just about what suits you best, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just like in the real world as well, that riders do have different riding styles. Some, like to maintain a really high cadence. Others, like to sort of grind the gear over and push a much bigger gear. Whereas others, like to be out the saddle, sort of like dancing on the pedals. Whereas others, really ever just sit down and just keep the power pushing through the pedals. And as you said, push a big torque. But it's just horses for courses, and there's no right or wrong. It's also just what suits you and what's your preference.
Certainly is. Well, a few riders are now being jettisoned out the back of this group as we head towards our halfway on this climb. Chris Hamilton there, Team Sunweb, looking good. He's one of the riders opting for a higher cadence there. Look at that, over 100 RPM, just turning that gear over. Sometimes it's easier when sat down to actually generate more power once you're over 90 RPM, 95 RPM. Still takes a lot of effort, but it is very efficient. His head rocking and rolling side to side. I do love these picture-in-pictures, but the group, Hannah, is thinning out. Cameron Worth has been dropped. Sean Bennett has been dropped. We've got Jesper Hansen from Cofidis out the back. Van Rensburger's gone. Nathan Haas is now 40 seconds out of the back of this group, a rider in the front. So as we saw in the women's race, the pace at the front ferocious, and riders are really now struggling to stay in contention. Just look at the damage that has been caused behind.
Yeah, the riders are really now starting to feel the effects of that high pace and the lots of efforts that have been put out throughout today's race. But this, is really becoming a very, very select group. I just saw Owain Doull just about managing to stay in this group. He's 1 second off the back, and if he can manage to try and stay in this group, try and get back into contention, he's got a great punchy sprint on him, so the finish will suit him, but it's all about getting over this king of the mountain and in the best possible shape. But it's now or never for these riders. If you are starting to lose touch with the wheels, it's time to make the effort now, otherwise the gap will grow and it'll be too big. But Schultz and Ovett looking very, very comfortable here.
It certainly is. Look at that. Another rider to mention there, Carlos Rodriguez. He is the junior Spanish time trial champion. Again, missed the under-23 ranks, moved straight to Team Ineos on a long contract. They know how strong this rider is, and this sort of effort clearly suits the young Spaniard. But look at Volgren in the yellow jersey, really piling on the pressure here. I don't think he's interested in King of the Mountains points. He's interested in trying to split this. Remember, he's a winner of Amstel Gold in the past, a winner of Het Nieuwsblad, loves these up and down punchy courses. Good riding here by Volgren with Gogol on the left-hand side there. Lawson Craddock in the front here too. Freddie Ovett, Turek again there. What a ride by Turek to stay in contention after all the efforts that he's made. It's looking like he's going to try and get maximum points. Lawson Craddock moves to the front as well. 6 classy riders moving clear. What an exciting finale we're set for. This is the final little left-hander. Then we only have 50 or so metres to the line. Who's going to take maximum points? It looks like it's going to be Volgren. Volgren from Turek. So Volgren, Turek, Lawson Craddock, and this is the group over the top. But what is the gap? There's some serious damage that has been caused. But the big question is here, Hannah, will they ride as a unit? 3.8 Ks to go.
Yeah, we'll just look at that. We had 6 riders. It's now swelled to 8. It's Valentin Madouas, the rider who's celebrating his birthday today, and Clark has been able to get in contact with these riders now. But NTT Pro Cycling in a very, very good position indeed. As the gap to Jimmy Whelan of EF Education opens up to 7 seconds. They still have time to get back into terms with this group, but it's a now or never, do or die effort. And it's a very, very fast descent down the back of here. 3.3 kilometers to the finish. Turek, for me, having a fantastic race. Really is the rider of the day, in my opinion. He's
I think
looks like... Sorry, Matt, go on.
No, without a shadow of a doubt. Sorry to cut across you there, but no, without a shadow of a doubt, I think the rider that deserves to be in this front group because of the effort that he's put in, Turek, the Czech rider from Israel Startup Nation, just on the right-hand side in that white and blue kit. You know, has he got enough left for the finish? He could be a real interesting prospect here. Valentin Madouas on his birthday. Imagine that. A French team running on French virtual soil. That would be amazing. Madouas just shoots out the back of that group. That was quite interesting. He's been distanced from the group now. Madouas. So Madouas back at the front here. Maybe a little bit of a glitch there with Madouas, but back in the group. But Israel Startup Nation well in control in terms of the King of the Mountains classification. They have 28 points. They're well ahead of Alpecin Fenix, so they'll go into stage 5 of the first ever virtual Tour de France in the Maillot Epois, the polka dot jersey. But here's a reminder of the 7 riders out in front, the 8 riders out in front, should I say. Will Clark, Nick Schultz, Freddie Ovett, Michael Gogol, Daniel Turek, Lawson Craddock and Valentin Madouas of Groupama FDJ. Difficult to call from this group, but they are working well, and the gap, importantly here, Hannah, is going out now 10 seconds to the chasing Zukowski and Whelan.
Yes, they are working very, very well together. 9 seconds now is the gap to Rodriguez and Michael Shaw. But Nick Schultz comes to the front for Mitchelton Scott, so he's the only rider in this group from his team, NTT Pro Cycling, with 2 riders, so in a very, very strong position. As you can just see all the riders setups there, all working away, all with different setups on the bike, some opting for out the saddle. But it's getting really cagey now as we see 1.2 kilometers of racing. Interesting that NTT Pro Cycling with Valgren and Michael Gogol sitting at the back as Gogol drops a draft power up. He's got Valgren on his wheel as we go under the Flamme Rouge.
The Flamme Rouge has been passed on stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. The Caspat stage, the leg breaker, and the hopes and aspirations of many riders has indeed been broken on this difficult, fast, punchy stage. And we have 8 riders heading into the finale across the cobbled bridge. These beautiful French scenery punctuating today's stage. Turek now goes, one of the main animators for Israel Startup Nation. He's out in front. Michael Gogol opened things up. And also the rider from Trek is in the mix, Will Clark. Look at this. Will Clark has opened things up. An amazing move. Clark has half a second over Michael Valgren. Michael Valgren in the yellow jersey, but look at Clark. Clark rounds the final corner here for Trek Sigurfredi, but it's got no power up left. But it's got nearly a second lead. Can Valgren close it? Valgren comes over the top, but it's Freddie Obet. It looks like Freddie Obet into the polka dots takes the win. Perfectly timed sprint by the Australian rider from Israel Startup Nation. Came from almost nowhere, dropped his sprint at just the right moment, but Obet takes the win ahead of Nick Schultz and Michael Valgren. But despite no sleeves, he takes the win. Freddie Obet of Israel Startup Nation takes out stage 4. Superb finish there, Hannah.
Yeah, fantastic by Freddie Obet. He finally got that stage win in the virtual Tour de France. He came so close on stage 2 on the seafront in Watopia. And it was a photo finish. He just lost out by such a minor margin, but today he was the clear winner. He had daylight, and fantastic result for Israel Startup Nation. Freddie Obet, the Australian rider, taking a win today on stage 4.
That was absolutely superb. What a sprint there. Well, I thought when Will Clark went early, the Australian riding for Trek Sigurfredo, and I thought he'd got it. But look at this late power up being used. Again, the idle power up, that's the one you want. And it just, I mean, the timing in terms of the power up there, as he crossed the line, Hannah, the power up stopped. So that's what you call optimum power up usage. Perfectly timed to perfection, if that's not too much of a double negative. But there we go. Congratulations all round the Israel Startup Nation press officer. I've no doubt will be straight on social media tapping away, and well he might, because that's a mightily important win for the new World Tour team. They've just signed Chris Froome, of course, for the 2021 season. They've got big ambitions, and they've taken out their first individual stage in the inaugural virtual Tour de France. And there is confirmation. Freddie Obet of Australia takes the win ahead of a fellow Australian for Mitchelton Scott, Nick Schultz. Michael Valgren in the yellow jersey for NTT is third. Will Clark, well, the Aussies have packed at the top end of this race. Will Clark fourth, Valentin Madouath in fifth. Lawson Craddock in fifth, Danny Turek, one of the main animators of the day, also from Israel Startup Nation, up there too. Then we have Michael Gogol from NTT, Pierre-Henri Cote from Rally, and Ben Gasquet rounding out the top 10 for AG2R La Mondiale. And this again is the finish. Just look at that timing there. 50 metres to go. Obet hits the front. But in terms of the general classification, it will still be Team NTT Pro Cycling who move into stage 5 in the Maillot Jaune. We have 2 riders inside the top 10, Gogol and of course Michael Valgren. But again, that just shows, I mean, the knowledge that you need on Zwift, and also the correct use of a power-up. You need good legs as well, Hannah, but that was, he got everything right there, didn't he? Got himself in the front group and timed that sprint to absolute perfection.
Yeah, he did, and he didn't, start to panic at the effort from Will Clark or Trek Segafredo. He went early, dropped that aero power up, and Freddie Obet just kept his calm, kept his cool. He knew when he had to make his effort and drop his power up. He had the all-important aero as well, but he just timed that to perfection, and just, really is well deserved for the young Australian rider after missing out last week. But just shows the experience on Zwift, on racing here, and a late surge as well from Nick Schultz as well to come round and play second for Mitchelton Scott.
Well, Nick Schultz has been up there before. He was third on the opening stage. As we look at, again, the sprint, I could watch this little sprint all day. Absolutely spectacular. Turek overwhelmed there by Michael Volgren, but the early use of the power-up catapulted Will Clark into the front. We've still got around 120 metres to go here, but he gets swamped by everybody else. Actually gets swamped by 3 other riders, but no doubt about the win there. Clear win by several virtual lengths there. And we should be getting a quick chat with Freddie Ovett in just a few moments' time. It'll be very interesting to see what he has to say. I've no doubt he is absolutely delighted. 26 years of age from Australia. They should be coming up very, very shortly. Does ride for the Continental Israel startup team, but for this virtual Tour de France, been promoted to the World Tour team. And boy, has he served them superbly well, taking out their first individual stage win.
Oh my God, unreal.
Freddie Ovett, many congratulations. Stage winner of Stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. Well, last weekend you came very, very close to winning. What does it mean to you to get on the top step of the podium in the virtual Tour de France after 2 weekends of trying?
Oh yeah, it means a lot, to be fair. I think everyone knows I enjoy Zwifting, and I was close last weekend. As you said, I thought I had it, but he got me just on the line, Bernard, so chapeau. But no, it's just probably my last Zwift race for a while. I'm got to go back outdoors and do some proper racing on the real roads, so no more power-ups at the top of climbs, and back to reality.
Well, back to reality, but today, of course, a very important day for Israel Startup Nation to win a stage of the virtual race before you do go back out on the road. You talk there about being a fan of Zwift. You've ridden 6,000 kilometres on there and climbed 75,500 metres before the start of today's stage. So you've become a fan of it. How much do you think it's important to understand the game to help you to win?
I mean, I live in Girona, Spain, and we were in lockdown for 2 months. So before that, I didn't do Zwift at all, and I hopped on after 2 weeks and started riding with my mates, and absolutely loved it, to be honest. I just found it such a great tool to get some quality training done, and I just raced week in, week out. And yeah, you know, you have to learn it. It is a game, and you have to learn the ins and outs. But to be honest, I don't think it's as complicated as some people make it. You know, start hard, continue hard, finish hard. That's it. You know, it's not as complicated as people like to make it. It's a fantastic training aid, and I'm a massive fan of it, to be honest. I think it's fantastic.
And finally, the team now lead the King of the Mountains going into the final weekend. We don't know if we're going to see you again, but do you think that's the big objective now, having won the stage, secure a jersey in Paris?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's me done. I've done my 3 races. I'm not allowed to do any more. And like I said, I've got a month of racing now. So, but yeah, we've got Dan Martin, Piccoli, and some great climbers that are looking to do well in the Ventoux stage. I think the yellow jerseys pretty much out of reach. NTT are doing fantastic, so hats off to them. But yeah, we've got the polka dot jersey, so why not keep going with that and try and bring it all the way to Paris virtually, and before the real thing later on, where maybe we can do something similar.
Well, look, many congratulations. We've loved watching you, albeit watching your avatar for an hour at a time. But congratulations on a great victory on stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. Freddie Ovett, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to the ASO and Zwift for putting on such a fantastic event. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it can continue.
Well, thank you very much. Go and recover. Freddie Ovett, the winner of stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France for the Israel Startup Nation.
Cheers.
Well, great words there from Freddie Ovett, and very nice of him as well to thank ASO and Zwift for putting this on. Obviously, the Tour de France can't happen at the moment, but I've just been looking back through that interesting interview with Anthony there. He's been racing a lot on Zwift, of course, won stage 1 of the Tour for All, but he's one of those riders that has adapted to it very, very fast. And I know, speaking to some of his colleagues out in Girona, he's been setting Strava records all over the place as well, so he clearly likes these kind of very, very intense efforts. And but there we go, that's the classification. NTT now lead heading into stage 5 with 263 points. Rally Cycling still up in the mix with 188. Trek Segafredo still placing third, but only one point ahead of the Israel Startup Nation with 161, and then Mitchelton Scott in fifth with 110. And also on just over 100 points, we have EF Education first. That really was a spectacular race, but Ovet equipped himself so well, Hannah. But he's going to have a deserved rest as we look at the other classifications, just rolling through now. NTT still dominating the green jersey. The Maillot à Pois with 188 points. Now they're almost double the points of Mitchelton Scott in second with 96, and then Team CCC in third place with 81. Israel Startup Nation also up there with 59 points, just ahead of Alpecin Phoenix with 53. Then we have EF Rally, Cofidis, Trek Segafredo and Lotto Soudal rounding out the top 10 in the green jersey competition. Now next up should be the KOM, if I'm right. And there we go. I'm getting used to this, aren't I? There we go. Israel Startup Nation lead the King of the Mountains, but a lot of points on offer next weekend. 28 points, so 11 points clear of Alpecin Phoenix from Belgium, who have 17. EF Pro Cycling in equal third place with Cofidis both on 10. Then we have NTT, Groupama, Mitchelton Scott, AG Tour, Le Mondial, Bahrain McLaren. And again, rounding out the top 10 is Belgium's Lotto Soudal. And the next one we should have is the Maillot Jaune for the white jersey. This is the best under 25 rider. Every team has to enter a rider under the age of 25. So we're not going to see the white jersey classification. But just before we wrap things up and look towards next week, Hannah, another ridiculously exciting weekend of racing on this tour. I am loving it. I think the fans are too. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and I'm actually really happy to see Freddie Ovet finally get that stage win after coming so close last week. It is his final race of the 3 that they're allowed to do. So fantastic for the Israel Startup Nation. But just seeing, how the race ebbs and flows and how hard the racing has been, it's brilliant to see all these teams and riders going full gas to produce some exciting racing for us.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Hannah. It's been a pleasure commentating with you over the last 4 stages. We've got 2 stages to go. Please make sure, folks, that you join us on the 18th and 19th of July at 1400 BST on Facebook and Zwift's platform, on Zwift's YouTube platform too. But for now, from me and Hannah, it's goodbye. Thanks for watching. Ride on.